I was simply a huge, enormous nerd of telly. I was absolutely obsessed with it. I just got in at a point where television was really changing, digital landscape. I mean, I think you just didn't know it was a job. It's like a fantasy, isn't it, TV? It is a milestone moment because, you know, I think there hadn't been another woman in that role. I was writing sketches for comedy and things like that on radio. I really was every which way coming up with ideas all the time. You sort of just have to get yourself in the mix somewhere, and eventually you throw a lot of this stuff at the wall and something will stick.
Hi everyone, it's Carl Veltman here, and welcome to the second episode of Season 2 of The Expert Lounge. Each of the experts we interview for this podcast reflects on their career and shares the invaluable lessons they've learned along the way. Our guests are here to inspire you by sharing their journeys. So whether you're a student eager to break into your chosen field or a professional looking to develop in your career, insights from these experts will help you make your next step. Our podcasts are themed around the key sectors we're passionate about supporting here at Calderdale College. And today's episode will put a spotlight on the TV and film industry. So to kick off our second episode of Series 2, today's guest brings decades of experience producing and developing some of the UK's most loved shows. She's a trailblazer in comedy and drama production, a champion of fresh talent, and the founder of CanCan Productions. I'm delighted to welcome Managing Director Rebecca Papworth. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Carl. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Well, it's fantastic to have you here with us today. So, the Expert Lounge here to talk about your career in the TV and film industry, your journey. So, can you walk us through the path that you've taken from entering the TV and film industry to where you are now, having established CanCan Productions?
Well, it's quite a long time.
We might want to condense it.
Yeah, how long have we got? So I think it's interesting to reflect on how I got into TV, because obviously I grew up in and around Bradford and Halifax, so there wasn't at that point, there was no obvious entry point. I didn't know anyone who was in TV. I was simply a huge, enormous nerd of telly. I was absolutely obsessed with it. And basically, I became aware in my second year of my degree in Manchester of Oxford Road on the BBC Oxford Road building, and, walked past it doe-eyed, desperate to be in there, no idea how to get there. And I saw in Bradford that they were running something called Bradford Festival TV, and it was part of a Yorkshire cable network one-off thing. I begged my tutors, could they help me get some work experience there? And basically I got in there, and there was a huge amount of technical kit, really techie guys, and absolutely nobody who knew anything about production. And I just sort of said, I think I can do it, and had instinctually, through so much TV watching as a kid, sort of absorbed a lot of what you need to do, and booked loads of guests, and basically ended up producing an enormous amount of telly over my 6 weeks there, and then went back in my last year, final year, and did it all over again. And from there, made this show reel, which was quite crazy comedy entertainment thing, wrapped it up in pink furry material, because at this point there was nobody, there was no internet. I mean, this is how long ago it is. All there was a Guardian media and newspaper, and I basically copied everybody's name and sent, say, 60 pink furry VHSs in the post off to random people all over the industry. Got lots of replies. I
wonder what people thought when that landed on there.
Oh gosh, what on earth would they have thought? Mad woman. But it did, I was obviously, desperately keen, and I did get a couple of interviews. Yorkshire TV went in, touch typist. It wasn't for me. I failed. I thought, oh my God, that's my chance gone. But then Granada launched a load of satellite television stations at that exact moment. They were running a hothouse, and basically 2 interviews later, I got the job and I was in as a junior researcher. It was a fantastic break. I still know, and I'm grateful to the 2 people who gave me that opportunity. You know, I thank them to this day. It's a woman called Nicola Nuttall and Eamon O'Neill. And I just got in at a point where television was really changing, digital landscape, and I really ran at it. So this is an opportunity, and I really didn't look back. I sort of grabbed it with both hands, and very fortuitously, within about 18 months, I was poached. I'd moved from junior researcher. I was basically producing by the end of that, and then the guy who was mentoring me, a guy called Wayne Garvey, who now runs Sony, you know, is a huge name, was my mentor. And I would bore him rigid by every single week that I was in this job. I would send him a new idea. And I think that's something I sort of reflect on now, that was who I was. I was sending people, Wayne, every week an idea. There is a new idea, an idea for a show. This is my opportunity, and I was going to grab it. And basically, like I say, 18 months later, he took me over to the BBC, and I was in that Oxford Road building. So that was amazing. And it continued lots of progression from there. Made some big, bold decisions sometimes to go and work in a comedy show outside of the BBC, came back into the Beeb, and the people who were then looking after an independent show that I went on to series produce, they were the executive producer of Have I Got News For You? And he then took me down to London and had me do some, basically, where do we stop? But this is the journey basically through working on lots of different shows. You meet lots of different people.
I'm really interested. So you talked about having that sort of obsession with TV.
Yes.
What, as a young Rebecca, what was it that sort of glued you to the screen? What was it that you were into?
I think literally anything. I actually remember that Nationwide came to, because I was at St Malachy's, and I can remember Nationwide, for some reason, 2 children from our school were taken to Nationwide. I was furious it wasn't me. And I can remember watching that show that night, and both kids were asleep in the audience.
Yeah, I bet you were
I was furious. Yeah. But basically, I suppose television was a window onto the world, a world that you didn't have access to, and so it was huge. I recognise what it was. It was opening doors, showing you lives you didn't lead, and all sorts of things.
I think I'm wondering, was it sort of, watching drama, watching films, watching news?
Every genre. It was every single genre at that point. I mean, I was so nerdish that it's on reflection, I realised this, that I was incredibly excited because the BBC had changed their idents. And, so I'm desperately trying to engage my family with, they've changed the idents. There's going to be a big launch. Nobody is interested. Right. But I was. Yeah. And I suppose that's all I can tell you is I really was. So it's a bit of me always thinks there's something in follow your passion. You don't realise, but I obviously was really engaged with it.
I think it's interesting as well because, there's 2 things, you're obsessed with TV, you get lost in that sort of other world, if you like, but you didn't choose to go down a sort of performance presenting route.
No, I think I'm too introvert for that.
And so I guess you were fascinated by the way that these programs were constructed, the way that they appeared. the way that they were put together?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just didn't know it was a job. You know, it's like a fantasy, isn't it, TV? You don't realise, you have no sort of understanding that there is a sort of a construction at that point. But basically, I suppose, in time, and especially that work experience I did, this is so valuable, work experience was, I just got a grip. I just understood the principles. I sort of knew when a voiceover needed to appear. I knew there needed to be some titles. I knew there needed to be a bed of music. I had a feel for it, and it was definitely born out of that obsession. And I do think if you want to be in TV, even now, you sort of need that, because it's a bumpy industry. It's not so easy to be in. It's very competitive. It's freelance. So something has to sort of carry you to get you to, and I think for me, definitely, that sort of passion for it meant that it didn't matter how difficult it was. And it was, you know, it has had some tricky times.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Favourite TV show as a child?
Oh gosh, Bagpuss possibly.
Oh.
Yeah, probably something like that.
It's a good one.
Just beautiful and original and interesting, magical. Yeah, probably.
Not Button Moon. Can't interest you in Button Moon.
No, I'm not going there.
I mean, the production values were slightly lower.
And what was the other one I absolutely loved was Take Heart. Was it Take Heart or something? That was Tony Hart, the drawer.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think that was pretty special.
The gallery.
Yeah, very young, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So, I mean, you know, you've got a really impressive, and you know, you've talked a little bit about what has been a huge career there, and it's been full of, you know, lots of highs, I'm sure, and some really exciting projects. What is it? I mean, you're still working in the TV and film industry now, so what is it that excites you about it now, and why are you still in it?
I think again, it's that sort of, you do have to have a passion for it, you know. That doesn't dwindle really. You sort of, I'm a magpie. I'm interested. I'm always watching. I'm always trying to read the market. I'm always trying to anticipate. And I think when you're in development, that's what you do. And I think that's something to share with people, that, you know, you do have to be interested in it, you know, following it, trying to anticipate trends. And then, so now, you know, it's a living. It's been my living for a very long time. You know, and you've got a ton of experience at this stage. And I'm in a really lovely position in that I'm my own boss now. So TV is a freelance career for the most part, unless you get sort of a permanent job inside a broadcaster. And those jobs are, I think, harder and harder to find. So the freelance nature of it, you sort of have to be up for that. You have to understand that. And yet for me at the minute, setting up CanCan and being in CanCan has been the most permanent and, you know, best job of my entire career. I wouldn't have predicted it, but there you go. You know, I'm now my own boss. It's wonderful. So I'm just very lucky, and I really am.
I mean, you talked a little bit about, you know, the sort of looking back, and Granada were expanding, and there were all the sort of satellite stations. Obviously, the streaming market has opened up the industry.
Yeah, again, yeah, huge.
You know, I mean, what does that excite you?
It's more like you know, you're an interested participant. Yeah. You know, that's what I am. I'm watching it. And I am older. I've been in it quite a long time, so I have seen quite a lot of things happening, and I've seen genres that I could have easily specialised in disappear, literally disappear. You know, and can be really scary for different people. So I think you've always got to be mindful of what's coming and how things are changing, and audiences' appetites changing. Try and understand that, accept that change is inevitable. That's a really important part of it, and the landscape is constantly changing, so it's never a dull moment in telly.
Yeah, I think you make a really interesting point there. You know, what worked on TV 5 years ago doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I remember switching on the TV and there only being 4 channels. You know?
Exactly.
And look at it now, we've got so much choice.
We're so old.
You have worked...
I speak for myself.
No, I did. I chose to ignore the age comment, but so you've worked on some iconic shows, so Citizen Khan.
Yeah.
You mentioned Have I Got News for You? It's really interesting for me when I talk to people on the podcast because quite often they've had an individual or a couple of people that have really inspired them. Mm. Who was that for you?
I think there are. To me, it sort of splits. There are mentors inside my career. A couple of people I've sort of name checked today. There's the Eamon O'Neills, Nicola, Wayne Garvey, Richard Wilson, who was the exec at Have I Got News for You. Cheryl Taylor, who was the head of comedy for a while, was a brilliant champion. There have been significant people who have helped me in my career and supported my journey. And then in terms of inspiring figures that maybe got me interested in, I loved Caroline Aherne very much. I thought she was really inspiring. There's all sorts of comedy-wise. I was absolutely crazy about Vic and Bob. I've also, I've got letters from Bob Monkhouse.
Yeah, he was incredible.
Ronnie Corbett. Yeah. I've there's all sorts of people for different reasons. Some I've met, some I haven't.
And we've joked about age, but if you were looking back on your career, is there any advice that you wish you'd received?
Take maternity, stay in a permanent job when you're pregnant, Rebecca, and get some maternity leave, because I was so sort of fixated on risk and doing the things I wanted that sometimes I wasn't that what I wouldn't necessarily say I was so as sensible as I might have been.
Yeah.
That's personal. If I'm trying to give more general advice, I think what would I have liked to have been? It's really tricky, it's all about networks, and it's not that easy. If you're not a natural networker, it can be quite tricksy. You've got to find a way to build those relationships. Even so, I think.
It sounds like you kind of had those ideas, the pink, fluffy wrapping of the VHS.
Oh, yeah, sort of extroverting ideas. Yeah.
So, I see the TV and film industry as, there's a large number of women that work in the TV and film industry. There's a lot of opportunity for women. Has it always been like that? Has it always felt that open to you as a woman? And, I'm thinking about the fact you were the first woman to produce Have I Got News for You. How did that milestone happen, and how's that helped shape your career?
So I think what I would say is in TV industry, what I've noticed is that can be quite genreified how women sort of work in it. That you can find women work in a lot of subject areas that you might imagine they might. And so comedy, which is something I was passionate about, a lot less representation. And then what you also find is that women quite often are facilitating male creativity. That's really common. So that you find a lot of women in support, administrative roles, in and around, quite high up, but that's really common as well. And I think I stood out a little bit because I was always wanted to be the creative. I wasn't interested in being good at admin. And I was passionate about comedy, and I'd done some risky things to go and work on comedies, and that stood out when I met up with Richard Wilson, who was the exec, on Have I Got News for You. I didn't realise that at the time, so I worked with him on a show. I was series producing a sort of comic documentary with him, big series for BBC Two called Fame, Set and Match, which was absolutely did really, really well at the time. And he and I got on really well. He had an edit producer. The show had just been asked to go extended. The BBC had asked them to extend the show. This is what happened. And he said to me, look, there's an opportunity, come down to London. I'd just had my first daughter. So she was 3 months old, something like that. And he said to me, no, maybe a bit older. Yeah. And he said, basically, come down and edit, produce this longer version. So I went down, and what was very useful to me is I'd had lots of digital skills, lots of editing skills through the stuff that I'd done at Granada. So I was really quite confident about being in the edit. I'd done loads of it, and I was naturally pretty good at comedy. So I got in there and confidently did it. Completely unbeknownst to me, the producer was leaving, and within 3 months of that role, I was asked to go down, meet Jimmy Mulville and Denise O'Donoghue, who ran Hat Trick. Went in for a meeting, and basically they grilled me on politics. Again, quite inadvertently, the show that I'd been working on, I'd expressed an interest in politics, run a politics episode, and do love politics. And basically, they then offered me the job. It is a milestone moment because, you know, I think there hadn't been another woman in that role, and you've got to be confident. You've got to really be confident because you're playing with really, really incredibly the top end of all the best gag writers in the UK are there. Amazing, you know, series producer and exec in Richard and Nick Martin at the time. You know, top end talent. You know, so big show as it remains. So and I think what I had was just like, I knew instinctively that I've got the chops for it, or else I wouldn't have taken it. But I know it was quite daunting. Yeah.
And I know, you know, looking at some of the shows that you've worked on recently, you really do sort of set out to champion emerging talent.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to aspiring producers and writers that are looking to break into the industry?
Hone your eye, be really dedicated. You know, it's sort of, I think all the, you know, we talk about in sport and lots of skill sets, you know, in music, learning a musical instrument, things like that. It's a 10,000 hours thing, isn't there? That's often talked about. My gut feeling is that I did a lot of my 10,000 hours when I was watching TV as a kid. Mm-hmm. And you're sort of honing something, you're honing your eye, you're honing your acute awareness of when something's good and it's working and why it's not. And so I would say to people, treat the industry in that same way. Watch a lot. Go out to comedy. Listen to a lot. Listen to the podcasts that are out there. Hone your ear. Hone your intuitive skills for things. And then have a go. Because that's the sort of, you know, the digital platforms do provide an opportunity. Don't worry too much about failing. Don't worry too much about not getting it right. Just give it a go, because guess what? You will learn. And I suppose what I was doing is I was writing. I was writing sketches for comedy and things like that on radio. I was every which way coming up with ideas all the time. You sort of just have to get yourself in the mix somewhere. And eventually you throw a lot of this stuff at the wall and something will stick, and then you'll learn why.
I'm thinking about the work that you're doing now in CanCan. When you're in production, you might bring in, you know, young talent.
Yeah.
What are the skills that you're prioritising when you're building that team? So they may not have, they're not necessarily the finished article, but what are the skills that you're prioritising? And what are the qualities in them that you're looking to see?
I mean, I think there was a really good example on High Hoops, which is a show I've just made inside Calderdale College. I'm really excited about it. Comedy for Children's BBC. There was a young man called Bobby, who was working with me at Stespat Lunch. He'd just come in as a runner. He'd been there 3, 4, 5, 6 months. He had the most fantastic attitude, can do, always cheerful, nothing too much trouble, polite, worked hard. Nobody ever had there was never any issues with Bobby. Bobby really, really, really tried hard. And so when Stespat Lunch ended, I had a conversation with Bobby amongst other people and sort of said, what do you want to do, Bobby? And Bobby said, I said, what do you really want to do, Bobby? Because he was running at that stage. And he said, I really want to be in cameras. And I went, okay. And he said, I've actually been asking the camera guys here who have been letting me do bits and pieces. So there, what you're seeing is he's already trying to make himself some opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I think that entrepreneurialism, that drive is really, really important in whatever area you go into in TV. You need those mixture. You need a mixture of mobility. It's a collegiate art. There's a lot of people, 60, 70, up to 150. There's loads of people. You've got to be able to get on. You've got to be able to put up with sometimes quite demanding hours and cold conditions or not perfect. You've got to have the ability, the resilience for that. And on top of that, being positive in that environment, mm-hmm. keeping everybody, being bouncy and a good person to be around, very helpful. It can be quite tough. Mm-hmm. So anyway, good stuff. Then the lovely story is that Bobby is now working on cameras permanently. He came to work on High Hoops. We got him some funding to support and the team loved him, and he's now going on to make that his career. So there's definitely ways in, and I think you get your opportunities, you work hard, you make yourself really agreeable, you show resilience, entrepreneurialism, create your opportunities yourself, and guess what? People will step in to support that. Mm-hmm. That is the reality. People are always keen to help, but you've got to help yourself.
Fantastic advice, and I think it's interesting because a lot of time when I ask that question, people say, "Well, we're looking for people to be able to communicate, or people to do this or to do that." But actually, you touched on one there, just being sort of agreeable and getting along.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's
huge.
It can sound like a small thing, but it is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked there about the recent production that you've been filming at Calderdale College. You turned the college into a TV set, didn't you, during the summer months? So that's a programme that's been filmed for CBBC.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, sure. It's a children's comedy for sort of 8 to 14-year-olds, probably, maybe a bit older. I think adults will also like it. We've got some fantastic comedy stars in there, like Robert Webb and Izzy Suttie, who were most famous probably for Peep Show on Channel 4. So we've got stellar comedy talent. We've got amazing writer in Sinead Fagin, and it's about a girls' basketball team, and a girl called Aoife O'Neill, who basically changes schools, wants to be popular in her new school, and has the opportunity to join a failing basketball team. She decides to go in and turn it around, and it's about friendships, fraternity, sibling relationships, heartthrobs, you name it, everything that comes with being a teenager. And it's looking fantastic. We're absolutely thrilled. The college looks amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. And when can people see it on the screens?
At the moment, it's going to be February. We understand February 25. Mm-hmm. So that's super exciting. We're really, really thrilled with it, and the feedback so far is really positive. So.
Well, we loved having you with us, and we can't wait to see it. So, I mean, that's an example of how we've worked together, the college and CanCan. But how important do you think it is to work with educational institutions like ourselves, and how important is it for people like you and your company to get young people excited about working in TV and film?
I mean, it's a real it's a pleasure when you can bring on young people, and have them interested in that environment. It's because there is a wide set of skills inside TV. It's not just I'm a producer. I'm an executive producer and I'm an MD. So I've sort of come up at that sort of route, but I've written quite a lot. I've done little bits of directing. You can also be behind the scenes in camera, in makeup, in rigging, in design. There's all sorts of different skill sets across TV that it's nice to be able to sort of show people the sort of breadth of skills that it takes to be in the industry, and hopefully that's been shared during that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a huge thing, isn't it? Young people look at TV, they look at film, and they don't necessarily understand everything that sits behind that. The many roles and that go into making the end product that you see. So I think for us to be able to work with, professionals that are working at the top end of their game, but are set locally here in Halifax, that's incredibly powerful. It's relatable for our students. They can imagine a world where they might be able to take that step. And so, any connection that we have with yourself and people like you, Rebecca, is really important. I mean,
they do say, don't they, you can't be what you don't see. It's a really sort of valuable, and I think that's what you hope. I am passionate and from this area. It's fantastic to be able to, I have people I know that are working inside the industry as well, you sort of support. I had to go to London, a vast majority of my career I was in London or Manchester. Nothing here, very little in Leeds until Steph's Pat Lunch, which to be honest I was instrumental in getting over there. I had no work in this area, so to me to be able to sort of get something going is an absolute delight. And you do hope that there'll be the odd person who'll be inspired and think, do you know what, I wouldn't mind. And I think trying that.
It's an exciting time for Halifax, for Calderdale, for this region.
Fantastic things going on.
In terms of the creative industries,
Sally Wainwright's a one-woman, she's amazing what she's done around here.
Fantastic. We're in Deanclough Mill here.
Yeah.
So we're in Mill Studios, the college's brand new creative and digital
it's
facility.
A fabulous space. Yeah, wonderful.
So, we've invested in this site so that we can give young people and adults the opportunity to develop the skills, feed the industry. That there's jobs, there are roles that need filling. There's more and more work locally in this sector.
And it's a huge sector. I mean, it's bigger. I mean, when you go and do you look on sort of DCMS figures, I mean, it's bigger than automotive. It's a huge sector. It's a creative industries, and it's just imagining yourself into it and being prepared to put in the sort of grist, put in the graft to get going in it.
So I think for anyone that's sort of watching this or listening to this and thinking, well, that's great, but how do I, I've done a college course in media, or I'm doing a TV and film T-level, or I'm partway through my degree. What can they do? What can they do to stand out? And what can they do to get seen? Are there any festivals, events, opportunities for them to showcase their work? What advice would you give?
I mean, there's you've got the net. There is a mass of things out there to sort of tap up, be it Screen Yorkshire, which is a local resource, all the different film officers. You need to be sort of plugged into those, looking at those regularly, looking at the freelance sites that are on Facebook, etc. There are places like that. And then I would be actively encouraging people to make things, because you learn from it, you build networks and experience. And remember, you can do this on your phone. You can, there is ways of, and test things out, test out what you can do. And you're going to have your unique story to tell. And you'll need somebody to hold the camera, and you'll need somebody to do the makeup. And again, so there's ways of sort of gathering lots of people together who can go on to, build careers in the industry together potentially. And then there's a lot of sort of small film festivals where you can showcase your work, and there's YouTube, there's all those different, there's tons of different sites, aren't there, where people can put stuff up and start a conversation. Mm-hmm. You're going to need to put energy into it.
And you've got to be brave, right?
You've got to be brave and fail again, fail better. That is an absolute, that you've just got to be, accept rejection, don't worry about it, knock again. As long as you are doing the right things and have a good energy and are trying hard, people will see that, and they will help you.
What do you think the key, because I think it sounds like quite often, you can create work, you can put it out on platforms, you can keep trying to get those experiences, but work experience actually is a key. Getting into work directly with people that are in the industry. What's your advice for getting your foot through the door?
Yeah, I mean, I think work experience is the hardest thing to get, because there are lots of companies now have a lot of insurance issues with regards to work experience. So I'm going to be truthful and say that is quite tough. Mm-hmm. However, there are schemes, and again, tap up somewhere like Screen Yorkshire for anybody around here, but there are film agencies all across the country. They offer entry-level schemes, and it's through them who can sort of, in effect, facilitate your work experience. They can get you inside the door. They cover off all the insurances. They make it feasible for the production companies to use you. So go and look for those. And again, they're across the nation, they're nationwide, and they're also across genre, and they're also across skills. So it can be anything from production accountant, if you're really good with maths and numbers, and just love the idea of being around an exciting film set, but actually you're a bit of an introvert and you love there's roles for you. Mm-hmm. And again, we had a new guy came into High Hoops, first job, never done anything before, but that was what he specialised in. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is get yourself plugged into the screen agencies, mm-hmm. because they do have lots of entry-level schemes that will facilitate you an opportunity if you're super keen.
And of course, for anyone that comes and joins Calderdale College, there's huge opportunities to get involved in creative projects and creative briefs that we run for a range of external organisations. They're getting some hands-on experience. And we're also engaging with people like yourself, companies like yours, to come in and deliver talks, masterclasses, and give those sorts of experiences to students.
Exactly. Education is the other one in. It's because it is again about those industry relationships, building those, and these as institutions, they can help facilitate that relationship. So you get into Calderdale College in a media course, you're going to get yourself a show reel. You're going to learn and fail a little bit, but get better, and you might work out which bit of the industry you want to be in. And again, then those relationships that we've talked about with the industry, the college can then help facilitate you getting your foot in the door. So yes, it is, screen agencies, but education is another really fabulous way in.
And I think, there's something to be said, isn't there, about, you worked on high hoops, for instance. What sort of proportion of the people involved in that were actually from West Yorkshire?
A lot more than I think than a lot more productions than, frankly, a lot more than you would normally find.
Yeah.
On the principle that I sort of made a point of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of local people involved, and there'll be more. Should we be lucky enough to get into the second series, there'll be even more, because we've made more relationships. We've trained some people up. I brought people over from Pat Lunch, for example,
Mm-hmm.
who because I'm based here, have a knowledge of the people in and around it, I'm more able to give those people opportunities and chances because I sort of know who they are. So I think, I think we did quite well proportionally, to be honest.
And I think, there's an opportunity there, isn't there? The more production that's taking place, how great if actually it's the people from this region that really benefit from that.
Absolutely.
Those jobs, those roles, those
Yeah,
experiences.
of course it is. Wonderful.
Look, TV and film's constantly changing. And there's sort of you've talked about the idea of keeping up to date with trends.
Yes.
What the consumer's actually looking for. So I'm interested really in what your thoughts are on the future for TV and film. What's next? What are those trends going to be? What's going to be really big? And then also what's next for CanCan, and how does that align with what's coming next for TV and film?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I think original stories are always going to be of interest. So unique stories coming from a unique point of view. In telly, you are quite magpie-ish. We are quite, there's a new exciting thing over there. We are like that. There's no getting around it. And you see, you are reading the audience, but at the same time, you sort of can't help but be excited about something unpredictable that somehow bites. So I can't predict what's going to happen. It's always going to be great characters and stories. People, the crime's not going to go away anytime soon. I think the soaps are having a bit of a strange time. So they're changing in them, there's a lot of the audience is changing for them, but at the same time, Netflix is just about to invest in soaps in Europe. So it's a really intriguing as to what's going to happen next. But I always will say great characters, original stories. We're humans, that's what we relate to. And the balance in telly will be, for the UK, will be telling UK stories over international stories, because you've got to sell these to make profit on a lot of dramas and things these days. You need to have a story or a character's something that will relate internationally. And what you find is that a very small tiny little UK story doesn't translate well to everywhere. So there's going to be this, we'll see what will happen over the next few years of telly as to how we navigate that. But my gut is the UK is a fantastically creative place, and we'll find a way to keep, brilliant storytelling on the agenda.
So for CanCan,
for me at the moment, CanCan, we're really, really excited about Hoops. Obviously it's a show that's, it's comedy. It's I'm really pleased with the cast and how it's turned out. We really hope we're going to get a second series. That's sort of number one on our agenda at the moment. And then in and running alongside that, we've got, a couple of really exciting drama projects, which you've always got quite a lot of things rolling. Not too many. The industry's been quite quiet, so you've got to be quite mindful of that. But a couple of really fantastic IP is a big deal. So we've got some big IP, a couple of unique stories, true life stories, and you've always set those balls rolling. They're always going, but drama can take. High Hoops took 4 years to get to where we are. So you've just got to be in it for a long term and don't panic.
So you talk. If I'm interested to get your top tip. So best thing that you've watched in the last 12 months. Can't be one of your own productions.
I think Rivals is pretty amazing. Yeah. Really refreshing. Really, really great to see something as sort of. There's been a split between comedy and drama for far too long. It's been forever. And what I think that showed was that there's a huge appetite for something that's really ballsy and funny and great characters. Noisy, unafraid, not too politically correct. It's a wonderful piece of work, I think.
And for some controversy, anything that you think was a bit overrated?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that's overrated. What would I pick on? Well, for example, here we go. The new Eddie Redmayne. What is it? Day of the Jackal. Mm-hmm. For me, it's really quite dull. Right. I don't think it's that brilliantly made. I'm
just going to tell you this. My dad actually made the point of calling me and saying, "You've got to watch this. You've got to watch this Day of the Jackal."
Yeah. Well, there you go. But you see, for me, I just found it a bit boring. Yeah, okay. But I love Eddie Redmayne, but I didn't think it was that good. So it's always like that.
Thumbs up for The Rivals.
Oh, amazing.
And a few Rotten Tomatoes for...
Oh, yeah, I'm not bothered. Yeah. I'm not rushing to the second ep.
Okay, brilliant. So I don't know whether you revealed there. Is there any exciting project that you can reveal for CanCan that's coming up?
No. It's all in the there are exciting things, but it's all too.
You've probably signed NDAs.
Well, yeah. you not yet. You don't spook your development. Yeah. No.
Okay.
No.
But when you can,
I'll come back.
You'll come back. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So. I think it's been really delightful to talk to you today and to hear about your journey. Question that I ask at the end of every podcast is I want you to imagine if you could go back and send your teenage self a text with a piece of advice, knowing what you know now. What would that text say?
Oh, gosh, that's incredibly tough, isn't it? What would you say? It's all inside you. Trust your instincts. They're always right. And I think quite often you're bombarded as a teenager and as an adult with lots of external influences, and everybody's got an opinion on your life and where you should go and what you should do and how you should. And ultimately, you know what's right for you, whatever and what suits you and what you enjoy. And I would just say, pursue that. So it's a very long text.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think the sort of first part of the text is the text, and then you sort of explained it. And I think you're right. That period in your life where you're full of passion or desire to pursue a certain path, but there's such tremendous self-doubt, or there can be.
Absolutely.
So I think wow, if we could all have received that from someone, and maybe hearing that will impact someone that listens or sees.
Oh well, let's hope so.
Podcast. Rebecca, it's been delightful talking to you.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely.
Can't wait to see High Hoops when it
I can't either.
Finally
can't
hits the screens.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed that people love it and you get to go again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the hope. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic.
Thanks. Cheers.
All right.